Hi, and welcome back to another episode of The Architecture of Health. I'm Deb Voisin, and this week I have as my guest a shamanic energy healer named Marc Mangus. Welcome to our show today, Marc.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
I always mention how I met this guest and why I want to talk to them. And Marc and I both worked at one of my first tech jobs ever. What was it, 98, 99? Long
Yeah.
time ago. Along the way, we ended up having these parallel paths of having to figure out a lot of things about healing. During COVID, I was most surprised to see Marc make an astonishing recovery from some really remarkable disabilities while he also embraced this shamanic healing journey and has become someone who helps other people. Now, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I'm too willing to just fall into like a woo woo overbelief or too skeptical of an underbelief. And that's part of what we're going to unpack today. But first, Marc, I would like to know what was sort of the gotcha moment? Like, do you remember what was there something happening where you finally had to give in that shamanic healing was going to be a big part of your life?
Yeah, there absolutely was. There was a catalyzing event, but there were some significant things that led up to it as well. And uh, it all started with the car accident that I was in 2011. And in that accident, I had 12 discs in my neck and back that were either herniated or injured. And it left me in a state of really debilitating chronic pain where my choice every day was to take enough medication to cut the pain down so that I could operate, or take enough medication so that I wasn't feeling pain and then I couldn't think. And it got pretty bad after a couple of years. Frankly, it led me to a place where I was suicidal because I
Oh,
couldn't really see the point of living that way in that much pain. And the medical establishment wasn't really helping me. The state of the art for pain management is to send you to a clinic and they give you opioids and send you on your way. Good luck. And so I was already, you know, in a state where everything was on the table. It was high stakes, right? And I had to find something, some way to live that gave me hope and gave me a path to healing. And so I started at that point very seriously investigating alternative, what we call in the Western world, alternative healing modalities like acupuncture and neuromuscular massage and even chiropractic and other things like that. There was a form of chiropractic that used a machine that would do pulses and it would pull your spine. I can't remember the name of it now. It's been so long, but I was everything. I was trying everything, right? And still a lot of suffering. But at least I felt like I was taking responsibility for my own health. And then in 2015, I had an event where I had a sudden onset ulcer, no warning. And I went from feeling normal, whatever that is, to having a big stomach ache to bleeding out. And it all happened in like 45 minutes. I lost 6 pints of blood and left me in the hospital for 2 weeks with two IVs in each arm giving me blood platelets. And that was it. That was the last thing where, I'll explain more what this means in a minute, but spirit, I believe, tickles you at first to kind of get you on the path. And if you don't respond to the tickle, then it's a slap. And if you don't respond to the slap, then it's a trip. And if you don't respond to that, sometimes that's it. That's your last chance, right? And you get to start over again and do it again somewhere else. But yeah, I responded and I said, okay, I'm going to start today. Everything's different. I'm going to start. I did a program called Wild Fit that was about indigenous eating patterns. And that was highly educational. It taught me all about the dangers of dairy and how toxic industrialized dairy is. And it taught me about how sugar is disguised in processed food. There's 65 different names for sugar. So I started the wheel rolling on that, but it was still really difficult. Everything was like a battle to change. And I didn't expect it to be easy, but I was still very overweight. At my heaviest, I was over 400 pounds
Oh,
uh,
wow.
because I spent years not moving. It was too painful, right? And I was depressed. And I was on 5 different medications, all that kind of stuff. So what eventually changed things for me was I got an email from the Four Winds Society about this gathering of the shamans in Sedona. And Sedona is one of my favorite places on earth, and I hadn't been there in a long time. And I thought, you know what? I can't really afford the time or the money, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I went there, and that's where I met Alberto Villoldo, who's the founder, and 4 other shamans that were there. And it was a series of workshops, pretty typical weekend retreat, right? And I made a pact with myself that I wasn't going to pre-schedule anything. I was just going to go and experience it. And whatever I felt like, whatever session pulled my interest, I would go to that session, that kind of thing. Tried to be very free and open with it. And on the last day, I ended up going into a session with Stephen Farmer, who's kind of an elder shaman. He's been at it for about 40 years. And he's written several books. He's famous for channeling angelic energy, the Archangel Michael in specific. He's written a book called Michael. I didn't really know him at the time, but I've looked him up afterwards, and he's quite well known in the community. And his specialty is ancestor work. And that really intrigued me. I didn't really know what it was, but I thought, yeah, this is something I should do. So in the workshop, through kind of a guided meditation, he showed us how all of our ancestors and all of the choices that they made and how they affect us. And that by doing our inner work, we're doing their inner work from a karmic perspective. And so they show up to help. And we call them in to help. And I went through that process, and I had a what I can only call a samadhi experience where I felt like I had an electrical cord plugged into the top of my head and my whole body was just vibrating, and I was completely out of my body. I felt connected to everything. And it was profound, and tears streaming down my face. And when I came out of it, I saw others experiencing the same thing. And as I walked outside, as I came back to myself and I put my bare feet on the earth, I realized for the first time in 12 years that I had no pain. It was like somebody shut off a light switch and turned it off, and it hasn't returned. And I've lived pain free since that moment. And also, that was the last day I took any pain medication. So, yes, it happened quickly, but what I realized later was all the choices that led me up to that catalyzing event. That I had already started to look at my pain as a teacher, and that when I learned the lesson, the teacher would have nothing left to teach, and it could move on to teach others. So I had started to separate the notion of being in pain as part of my identity. I had already started to detach that. And I thought of it as something that I'm experiencing for a purpose. And I didn't really know what the lesson was, but I knew that it was there to teach me. And so when I was ready to disconnect, I was led to this event and these people. And that's where I learned about the shamanic training program from the Four Winds. And that's what led me to, what I'm doing now. But yeah, I know that's a lot, but that's the journey that led me to this.
I want to pause here and talk a little bit about pain as a teacher. This is such a big thing. And what I get that you had this experience where I think someone was inviting you to access the deepest kind of support, which is we have lineages, millennia of people it took to get us here, and to then imagine and allow ourselves to feel reverence for how much it took to get us here and how all that support has always been here. It's kind of like Christians saying you believe in a loving God, right? All of a sudden you have a team and it's not just
Yeah,
you. But
right.
here at the same time, uh, and I mean really, pain as a teacher, I love that you said you'd been letting pain teach you. You knew that the dangers of just numbing the pain. People get much more injured numbing themselves because they just cause more and more injury because they have no agency and respecting pain as a teacher. But I love that I never even thought about what it is to get attached to pain as a teacher.
Mhm.
I that that the best teachers you move on from, you know, the best teachers you won't be studying with forever. And
Right.
I love that about everything you're saying. So all right, so what does this, oh, I remember too, you went, you know, this was the beginning of your, this was the aha
Right.
moment. So what kind of things unfolded after that? Because I know you lost tons of weight. You
Yeah.
were inspired by that book, Grow a New Body. Can you give us
Mhm.
a few highlights of the biggest shifts that started happening after that?
Yeah, in an additional note on pain, and then I'll talk about that. The other thing that I've noticed now that I'm practicing with clients is there's this human quality that we attach our identity to whatever we're experiencing, the story of what we're experiencing. And that's the hardest thing for people to let go of. They can be in the most horrible situation of, pain or abuse or, addiction or whatever you have, but they've internalized it to the point where when they think of their own name or their own self or they look in the mirror, they see addict or abused person or someone who's in pain. And that's why they're stuck. They don't realize that they are the author of the story, not the story. And so part of what I learned without using those words and those concepts was that I have the power to write my own story and detach from the things that no longer serve me. That's my divine gift. It's the divine gift of all humans. And yet, billions of us don't operate at that level, right? We take on whatever story we think we need to as we evolve and never get to the point where we're realizing that we're doing that it's a choice, unconscious or conscious, right?
The question that came to mind was, I know in the therapeutic communities, I've heard this idea that you need to feel the pain to heal the pain.
Yeah,
Or does that create attachment to the
it can.
pain?
It can, for sure. It's all about how you're conscious of the dynamics of what's happening to you, right? And a lot of people are stuck in this mode of thinking that things are happening to them, not for them. And the shamanic idea is that everything that you perceive is happening for your learning, for your transformation. As horrific as it is sometimes for people. And that's where people get all twisted up and thinking about, well, how could a loving God allow these horrible things to happen? And, kids getting killed by chemical weapons. And I mean, just the most horrific things that you can think of. Why does this happen? Well, it happens for that person. It happens for everyone around them too. We're all learning here on Earth together. This is a co-creative environment. And how can things change if there isn't suffering, if there isn't a catalyst to prod us into changing? If everything was butterflies and puppies, we wouldn't really have much motivation to change anything. And so, as harsh as it may sound to someone who hasn't heard that before, I believe that's the operating principle we have to deal with. It just is. And so we can struggle against it or we can embrace it because the same power we use to tear ourselves down and give ourselves negative self-talk and be stuck in things is the exact same power we can use to change that dialogue and build a new identity, build a new us, and transform into something else.
And that's one reason I wanted to have you here is these tremendous changes you've made. You know, it's easy, like you said, to fall into that victim trap. I remember when my son had, this quote genetic condition, I went around, I knew to go searching for, use that term, and then cure, Tourette's cure,
Mhm.
Tourette's vitamin deficiency, Tourette's, B vitamins. I knew that there had to be an example. If I could find an example somewhere where someone succeeded, that if they could do it, I could do it. And then, and you and I right now anchoring other people up to
Mhm.
stretch their idea of what's possible. Um,
Yeah.
and at the same time, yeah, yeah, I think that's the main point is you first have to envision what's possible. Oh, the other thing
Yeah.
is, did you is it more a reduction, like a removal of this attachment to pain, or is it a building of I see myself 200 pounds lighter? I see
Mhm.
my son healthy. I see this, or do you think it's just both?
Well, that's a great question because the prevailing wisdom in the West is that you have to go do something to change something. And what I learned through the shamanic practice, especially with the Andean cosmology that goes back to the Inca, everything is of the earth. Everything is aligned with the divine feminine energy. So it's about nurturing, surrendering, embodying all these inner kind of qualities that we associate with the female. And yet in the West, even for women, we're in this very um, male, imbalanced male energy. There's nothing wrong with either energy, right? The key is to have it in balance. But in the West, we're so male focused where everything is go, do, build, change, correct, have an opinion, you know, forge a path, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, all these kinds of concepts, right? To the point where it's toxic. It's not in balance, right? And this was like a splash of cold water in my face learning these concepts and going through the initiation and the training. Because what I realized pretty quickly is that I didn't have a health problem or a weight problem, quote unquote. I had a harmony problem. I was out of balance. And so I started looking at my life and my identity and my mission on earth as where am I not in harmony? And food jumped out quickly as the concept of food as medicine. It's the cutting edge of food science. Alberto Villoldo and Mark Hyman and Neil Perlmutter and all these brave, frankly, doctors and researchers that are out there on the edge taking the slings and arrows and telling the establishment that you're not getting it. You're not getting it how the science operates around food in our bodies and the fact that our bodies have untapped regenerative capabilities if you can unlock them. And the best way to do that is with food. It's really basic, right? And there are lots of schools of thought on how you should eat and what you should eat. But the program that I followed and Grow a New Body was part of the shamanic training I went through, um, is about a more indigenous relationship with food. Meaning it's not just what you eat, it's where you got it from, who created it, how you sourced it, how it came into your body, all the things, right? And so it's that word again, harmony, right? It's how can I be in harmony with the earth, with the people that are involved in the production of the food, and how I take it in to support the different things that I'm trying to correct or bring into harmony, right? And so once I figured that out, I mentioned before, I was trying to lose weight and I was trying to do things and there was a lot of suffering and it was really hard. I got into this state of flow with it. I did the Grow a New Body program, which is I think it's 90 days to go through all the stuff and then get into kind of like a maintenance phase. And I just kept doing it because it became like this is the new normal. So it's about intermittent fasting and allowing your body to go into ketosis every day and kicking the mitochondria in the butt so that they go into regenerative mode. eating the things in the during the day, in the morning, in the afternoon that support that. Um, Limiting things like bad carbohydrates or unproductive carbohydrates, I'll put it that way. There's a lot to it, but once I got into it, the result was astonishing because in a very short period of time, I had found, so I had lost some weight before that for my highest, but within like a 9 month period, I had lost 75 pounds. So to date, total, I've lost 120 pounds. And I've also, my eyesight has gotten better. The hair in my head is growing back. And I'm getting all these lab tests done every 3 months with my doctor who loves this. She's like, she feels like this is our secret plan. And she loves being part of it. And she orders whatever tests I ask her to order because she's just such an advocate for what I'm doing. But every 3 months I get measured. So I want to build the story on the medical side as well of how are my vitamin levels changing and how are my triglycerides and my A1C and all these things, right? Because when I started, it was crap. I had high cholesterol. I was pre-diabetic. I mean, just about anything that you could pick that could be wrong was wrong, right? And now I'm looking at optimization. Like, oh yeah, your triglycerides are a little high in the normal range. So what can we do to affect that? And it's this cyclical iteration of optimization now. It's not about worrying about my health anymore, right? And I have absolute trust and total surrender to spirit that if I need to correct something, I will be given that information and it will happen because that's what's happened.
Yeah, there's so much there to unpack. So, one thing you just talked about was testing. And I'm an
Hmm.
advocate of testing only if it's a test you're willing to do recurrently.
Hmm.
So, that's like one limitation I found in my son's healing journey was if there was $1,000 test, I wasn't going to do it three, four, or five times. And yet later that brought me towards some of the easiest evidence to find is are
Hmm.
your eyebrows growing in thicker? Is your hair thicker?
Yeah.
Is your hair getting gray? Do you have skin spots? Do you have a
Yeah.
rash? Are you does certain food make you bloat? I know when I was married, I'd have my wedding ring when I ate processed unsourdough'd processed gluten that had all those additives like riboflavin and all the crap they put in, almost all gluten and the glyphosate, right? My wedding ring wouldn't fit. I couldn't move it on or off. I could gain or lose 5 pounds. And so part of the other thing is, we are our ancestry. I've heard the AB blood type, like I have, can eat whatever they
Hmm.
want. I've heard O has very specific
Hmm.
things that Europeans need more protein and fat. People in equatorial climates, more fruit and certain carbs. So the main the high level idea though here is you're paying attention to what works, but you're also by caring where it came from and what form it's in, you're immediately getting rid of thousands of toxic ingredients that your
Right.
body gets choked just trying to get rid of those. How could it possibly start doing the work of cleaning itself up? And
Yeah.
for some people fasting is dangerous and for some people it's not, but the
Yeah.
main thing here is caring about the simplicity and the
Right.
honesty of the food and the intentionality of and checking that it's actually giving you the
Yeah.
energy that you need. So and one other thing that struck me, I love that you used the word harmony. I know your website is vital hyphen harmony.
Hmm.
That's one thing I was going to say earlier which I forgot, which is a lot of the pesticides originally were byproducts of war. They were chemical warfare weapons
Hmm.
that couldn't be used. So they thought, let's dump them on our food.
Right.
Monsanto and Bayer, they were creating the
Mhm.
chemicals in the gas chambers in the
Yeah.
Holocaust. And we've been
Right.
sold that this war, this is based on this lack of harmony, that this
Yeah.
warfare is in our food. And I see the same thing in terms of harmonizing with the easiest energy in the world to get, which is the energy from gravity. There's a warfare mentality in the movement world too, like, push it,
Yeah.
no pain, no gain. I'm doing I saw this one dance teacher once, and she was kind of getting puffing herself up like, oh, I'm putting up a good fight against gravity. And I was like, well, I don't know about you, but I want to be friends with gravity.
Yes.
I want to use
Yes.
what I've got. All right. So what does okay, so food, boom, and you get the results, you've got measurable results, you're regenerating, and you've
Mhm.
gotten a regenerative lifestyle going. Tell me
Yeah.
more about where your spiritual practices have
Yeah.
evolved.
So part of the training and the lineage that I learned that was so transformational was so just a bit of context. So I've been reading 2 or 3 books a month since I was a teenager. And so I had all this, rational knowledge about world history and indigenous practices. And I loved it, but I thought of it, I realized, as just cool stories, cool things that people did. It didn't impact who I was or how I lived. But when I started doing the training and I started to understand this philosophy by the way, the word they use for harmony is Ayni, Ayni. And it's a little bit more densely packed than just harmony. It also incorporates the concept of reciprocity with all things, especially yourself. And so the shamans of the Andes, they call themselves Pacos. This is their mantra. This is their life, is to live in Aini. And anything that is not Aini is kind of their mission to bring into Aini, right? And it's such a beautiful philosophy, and it's also very self-deconstructing, which really attracted me because the shamans believe that as soon as you strongly identify with something, it's time to put it in the fire. And I love that, right? Because it reinforces this notion that you're the author, not the story. It doesn't mean that you can't embrace a story because we all do. That's how we live. That's how we get out of bed in the morning, right? Is there's a story about me being earning a wage and keeping the lights on and buying food and all this kind of stuff. But now I realize that this is a story. It's not my identity. It's just what I have to do right now, right? And so that's part of this Aini concept is you're at the center of this sphere of perception, and that how you perceive what's happening is a choice. It's not just happening. You choose. And all of the practices and the rights that we learned in the training kind of go to support that. And so my mission and how I work with people is the same as how I worked with myself. I got into this to heal myself. And at some point I realized, and through the training and what they were telling me is your wounds are your power. Your vulnerability is your power. That's what connects you to other people. And that's what allows you to model how they can unlock their own inner healer. And so where a lot of the new age movement and the self-help movement is kind of like guru based, like find a guru and give your power to the guru and they'll fix you. Whether you use those words or not, I see it happening all around me, right? This is like as far from that as you can get. In fact, if you start treating me like a guru as a client, I'm going to immediately redirect you to your own power because that's how our teaching works and our practices work. It's about you unlocking your ability to change anything in your life, mind, body, spirit, right? And there's this wonderful word, a Japanese word, and it's kokoro, Kokoro. And what it means is the fullest expression of who you are as a human. And I've really embraced that concept as kind of the mantra, if you will, for the work that I do is because that's the path I feel I'm on, is to become the person I was always meant to be. And that's what I want for my clients. And it's going to be different for every person. So it's not this boilerplate process. Some people are going to come with, physical things they want to work on because that's the most present thing in their life. Other people are going to feel, they have a profound lack of connection with something greater than themselves. And that's what they want to work on. Others are going to be more, my relationships are horrible and I can't find the one person I'm supposed to be with or whatever, right? It's all going to express differently in different people. But the problem with a lot of the knowledge that's trying to be pushed on us in the self-help movement is it's very compartmentalized. It's like, oh, you're overweight. You have a weight problem. I have a program for that. Whereas the thinking that I was taught is your body's trying to tell you something. Your body is expressing something that is out of harmony. That's why you're overweight. Right? Or that's why your relationships suck, or that's why you feel disconnected and isolated and alone. It's because spirit is using your body, your existence on this earth to express something that's out of balance so that you can balance it. Right? So it's a very holistic, harmonious way of thinking. And I've studied lots of other ways of thinking, Ayurvedic, Buddhist thinking, even Celtic and other things. And the more I learn and the more I know, the more I see how parallel they are and how overlapping they are, a lot of these different systems of knowledge. And so it kind of leads me to believe that certain things are just true. They reflect how the universe is constructed. And if we can align with that, wow, that's when we really give ourselves an opportunity to go into a flow state and really, really change things.
Beautiful. And what does some of the practices look like?
So there are 10 rites. They're called the rites of the Munai Ki. And Munai is the Quechua word for love. And Ki is a Japanese word for practice. So everything we do is about love, restoring it, allowing it in, balancing it, harmonizing it, right? And the 10 rites are designed to unlock the various personal power that we have. And they're things that I do personally to reinforce the rites that I was initiated with. And as part of the training, I'm authorized to give those rights to other people. And so it may sound strange to think about, okay, somebody comes to you and they're overweight or they have a problem, and you're going to train them in these rights to become a shaman. Well, yes and no. Whether you ever choose to use them as a healer with clients is totally up to you. But the same rights are used to heal yourself. Right? So it's this reciprocity, it's this cyclical thing, right? There isn't a separate thing to do to heal yourself as to heal others. And so what I do with people is I have a couple of ways I work with them. I have a men's group that meets every 2 weeks to provide a safe container for men to kind of explore this balancing the divine feminine to heal the toxic masculine kind of thing that's kind of unique to men. And since I'm a man, it seemed kind of natural to do that. And then I also have a 13-week program that goes through all the 10 rights and goes through a lot of the basic knowledge about grow a new body. And it's really designed to give people enough time to get exposed to all this kind of stuff and give them the tools to make some changes in their life. And then I also do, just one-on-one coaching with people. And that's a little more open-ended. What I try to get away from doing is session work, where somebody says, I want to book a session with you. Because that's in my way of thinking and in what I was taught is that's really strictly about intervention. Because that's all I have time for is to intervene in some problem that you're having. And that may or may not, sometimes it is. Let me preface that. But it may or may not be in your highest good. because sometimes you're experiencing what you're experiencing so that you can learn. And if I come in and disrupt it, then, who does that serve? It doesn't serve me, and it certainly doesn't serve you. So I've seen it both ways with clients. Sometimes people are in crisis and they need something. They need me to intervene. But I always try to put it in the context of here's what we're doing. I'm intervening, but here's the information. Maybe I'm just doing a hypothetical. Maybe I'm getting information from spirit about why you're experiencing this. And so I definitely want that to be part of the context of how we work together, even though I'm coming in and showing you how to change the energy. And that's a key point too of how I work is it's not me doing something, even though I know practices and protocols and things, how to manipulate energy. What I'm doing is holding space for you to do your work with source. So the way that we talk about that is becoming a hollow bone. I'm the conduit, I'm the facilitator, but you're doing the work. And so that gets into your belief system. And do you believe you can change? Are you taking responsibility for your connection with source and your divine nature? And if all that stuff comes together, wow, these sessions, these interventions, as I call them, can be profound. And I've seen it happen for me, people working on me as I was going through the training in particular, but also people that I work on have, walked away from issues that they've been carrying their whole life. And there's always follow up and reinforcement that's needed because sometimes things can come back if you don't change the affinity to it. If you're drawing it in constantly, me intervening isn't going to change anything, right? But sometimes people just need space, and I can help with that. I can intervene sometimes and give them that space. But I always, like I said, I always try to do it with the proper context and the proper intent so that it's always in their highest good.
That brings up so many things. One is I call this show the architecture of health because health is an environment.
Mhm.
It's not a yeah, the architect is looking at the sun and the angle of, a good architect. You're looking at all the environmental contexts and then making a space that you can move in and out of, kind of like, a splint, a bandage. It makes the
Mhm.
space for your bodies. And we forget. We confuse the intervention with the regenerative power that our body
Yes.
has to, we might be able to get a little help in nourishment, we might be able to get a little help in rest,
Mhm.
emotional support and such, but at the end it does come from within us. And
Yeah.
now, one question about what have you tell me a few, like, of the things you've seen with clients, like the kinds of problems they were
Mhm.
working through. And I know yours was, and it was weight loss and pain.
Mhm.
Uh, Tell me about some of the other surprising restorations that you've seen in this realm. Oh, well, I know what's his name, Alberto.
Yeah.
I remember reading in his book about how he was told he was dying and his liver was gone and he
Mhm.
regenerated his liver. And I do know the liver can regenerate. I've known of
Yeah.
a friend was actually signed up at Stanford, was on the list to get a liver transplant. And then they talked to a nutritionist who got them to stop eating foods they were allergic to, like processed gluten, and then they were shocked that the liver had fully restored. It
Yeah.
was like it only took like 3 or 4 weeks.
Right.
So that's an example. Tell me about other things where we might not. It might not occur to us that this is the right. How would I know this is the right tool for a situation
Right.
someone has?
Well, and this, if somebody has never heard anything like this may sound a little wild, but Alberto's, I think he's written over 20 books, and some of them have extensive case histories in them. Text people's names, right? But he's like, he talks about the stuff I'm going to talk about. And I haven't been practicing that long, but I've already seen some of this stuff happen. I had one client who came to me with an undiagnosable headache. They'd been to every specialist, and neurologists and had all kinds of scans. And they had this pain in their head, in the top left quadrant of their head, and it would move around. It would go kind of back and forth, and sometimes it would even go down their face into their eye. And it was just it would range in intensity from like a 10 to like a 4, but it never went completely away. And sometimes it was like that, okay, I'm having a 10. This is all I can get done today is just be in pain, right? And they said, "Can you help me?" And my answer was always, maybe I'll try, I'll see what's going on. I can at least maybe get some information on what's happening, right? And so I did what's called an extraction, and there's a whole lead up to it where we create space, and I check the energy in the energy body, look at the chakras. They give me information about what's happening based on which ones might be out of balance. But when I got to the head, I felt this huge metal bar on the spiritual plane in their head, like sticking out of their head. And so the extraction was a process to gently coax that energy out of their field, and and then kind of seal up the wound afterwards. And there were two different forms of energy. There's what we call liquid energy, which kind of moves around, and then there's the crystallized energy, which is usually associated with an extremely traumatic event, which may or may not have even happened in this lifetime. It could be something that they've been carrying with them for eons, right? Sometimes I don't know that. I just see the object, or I perceive it. And so we removed that. And then there was also some liquid energy that we removed. And this all took like 2 hours. It was very intense. And the person was exhausted afterwards. And in the ensuing weeks, they told me, well, yeah, the next day it was about a 4, and then it flared up to about a 5, but point is, within a couple of days, it was gone. There was no pain, and it hasn't returned. So that's the kind of thing that who's going to know that as the person suffering with that condition, unless you are, you've studied energy healing and you've studied these metaphysical concepts. You would be totally unaware, and you do what this person did and go to all the specialists for years and get drugs and try different, Western therapies, and have nothing work because it isn't a medical problem and it's not in the body. It's not a body problem, right?
Wow. Yeah, that's quite a leap. And until the shit hit the fan in my situation, I was unwilling to. I was talking to Dr. Christiane Northrup at this dinner, and I told her, like, oh well, it's the disease of the day. She's like,
Right.
no, 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 that's not normal, Deb. I was like, what? Kids don't get sick every single year with something crazy? She's like, no, that's psychospiritual. She's like, you need to go to another level. I'm really thankful that that started me thinking this way. And the one memory that this sparks up is I was on my way to Ecuador for an event, and I was sitting on the airplane next to this guy, and we were making small talk, and I thought we would have nothing in common, but he's like, "Oh, I'm a metaphysician." And I was like, "Whoa." And he talked about how we are mostly space.
Yeah.
We are very little of actual dense tissue. And
Hmm.
yet we start to think about the density. Even our bones are 20% water, and
Right.
mostly we are more energy than matter, really. So this
Hmm.
possibility that it can shift and shape. He told me too about
Yeah.
a story he told me all these crazy healing stories starting when he was a kid, just, and his mom was a metaphysician. It was just crazy. But the one thing I remember him talking about were the flies in the jar, where when you take the lid off, or the fleas maybe, they just get so used to the lid of the jar that none of them for generations ever jump out of the jar, even though the
Hmm.
lid is off. So he had that as kind of a starting point for
Yeah.
how you could imagine something that you could imagine that there's a limiting belief
Hmm.
uh and start from there. Wow, that was a great story. And every single cell in the human body has a filament for detecting frequency or vibration.
Yeah.
And our bio energetic, our biomagnetic field, it's in at least 6 feet. Just the heart's biomagnetic field is 6 feet around us.
Right.
When I was studying sound healing, you could use a tuning fork and go in and out of the field and find these sticky spots that were supposedly like
Mhm.
rings on a tree that were moments in your life where something kind of vibrationally got a little stuck. So
Mhm.
I'm sure this is all related, let
Oh
alone
yeah.
whatever things. The one time I went to a shaman, she did what a soul retrieval thing for
Mhm.
something that happened in the 13th century. I don't know.
Mhm.
Don't ask me
Yeah.
what happened, but it was good.
Yeah. No, I do soul retrievals as well, but it's very rarely the first thing I would do with somebody. It's usually there's a process of getting to know their energy body, and maybe I'll be different in 10 years from now doing this, but the way I work now is really to try to get to know the person on an energetic level, what's happening, what are the dynamics of what's happening, and then then I'm led to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, whatever is the right thing for that. And it's not me determining what's next. I mean, part of what I do is the whole concept of a shaman is someone who talks with spirit, right? And so I'm always kind of energetically saying, show me. After we're in the proper space and in the proper energy, show me what's next. And when I was learning, that was one of my biggest hurdles was going from the Western mind and the tech career I've had, which is all rational and it's about me doing things, to this completely opposite way of thinking, where my job is to create space and get the person comfortable and relaxed, and then ask spirit what to do. And then when I get the information, of course, I have the techniques and protocols to follow, but it's not about me. I'm like 10% of the equation, right? It's spirit saying this is what this person needs right now, or this may be if we're more so there's kind of like two broad areas. One is about the energy body and how it is now, and then the other area is about destiny and fate. Those are kind of the two broad areas that I operate in. So the story I told you was kind of about the energy body and how it is now. But another area that we work in is in the area of divination, where it's not about reading the future necessarily. It's about understanding that person's through line, their timeline of where it came from and where it's going, and how they can attach to a different timeline. In fact, the Inca and the current shamans talk about the threads of fate, and they think of it as energetic threads connecting us to our future self. And people that are operating on a level where they're unaware, they're not conscious spiritually, are victims of fate, and fate is fatal. Fate is just responding to whatever happens to you and your genetics and your family history, and you're just playing that out. You're playing out that story. But we talk in terms of claiming your destiny so that you're not connecting to a thread of your probable future, but you're connecting to a thread of your possible future. The future whether you're already healed, you've already done the work, you're already the person you were always meant to be. That person exists. And so there's a process whereby you can connect to that person and you can bring that energy into this version of you. And that we call that claiming your destiny. And again, it's all about you. It's very personal of who that is and what that looks like and the effect that it can have on your life. But that's a really exciting part of my work. And it's a journey that I'm on to try to connect to that version of myself. And that's the other cool thing is I feel like I'm on this journey and yet I get to work with people that are on their own journey. So this concept of, the healed healer and everything's fine and I have no problems is such an illusion. And that kind of goes to this guru culture as well. Is, a lot of gurus kind of advertise that, I'm completely healed and now I can show you how to heal. I don't believe it. Because everybody's on a path of healing of some kind. We're on some kind of path, right? So why wait? The shaman says, why not now? Do it now, whatever it is.
I think that's the perfect note to end on. Why not now? Whatever it is. Why not now? Wow, Mark. All right. So, audience, you can find more about Mark at his website, www.vital-harmony.com. That's vital-harmony.com for energetic, shamanistic help. Uh, Anything else you want to say about okay, why not now? So, right at this very moment, is there anything that you invite the audience to do as an a step in this direction right now?
Yes. So what's coming to me is to remind people that you are ultimately responsible for your perception of events around you. A lot of people are very upset right now about what's going on in the world, but realize that you are choosing to be upset. You are choosing to be triggered in that way, right? And you have the power to change your perception in any way that works for you. So if you can change one thing, try to realize that and create some space, even if it's just breathing, and realize that you are so much greater than what you're experiencing right now, that you're capable of a level of perception that is completely different than what you have right now. And you have the power to do that.
I love it, Mark. This was great. Thank you very much. I'll see you on Facebook, I think, right?
Yeah, we'll see you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.